here we go. We'll say this is 1 and this is 2 inches. And we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So we need to count how many long hash marks there are. We don't count the first one, but we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 5 of them. So that means each one of these big hash marks represents 1/5. If we want to do that in decimal, we can say, take our calculator and be like, well, what's 1 divided by 5? And 1 divided by 5 is 0.2. So each hash mark either represents 1/5 or 0.2 in decimal form, which is the same. So if I were to say, I want you to find 1 3/5, we look at the top number and we say, okay, 3/5, that would be the third hash mark. So here's the first, second, third. So that would be 1 3/5 would be here, right here. So that would be 1 3/5. If I were to tell you to find what is 1 and let's do 0.6, let's do 0.8. 1.8, sorry, that's an 8. 1.8. Then I would say, well, how many times does 0.2 go into 0.8? So 0.2, 0.2, 0.2, 0.2, that gives you 0.8. And so that means that we were going to need to look at the fourth hash mark because there's 4 0.2s that go into it. So we count 1, 2, 3, 4. This would be 1.8. Okay? So you have to determine. Now, if we look at the smaller ones, you know that, let's count the smaller hash marks. Now we count the big ones as well because we can't skip over those, but we can count the smaller ones. And so we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So there's 20 little hash marks. So they represent 1/20th of everything. And if you want to do that in decimals, you would do 1 divided by 20, and that would be 0.05. So if I told you to find 1 in 5/20ths, then I'm looking for the fifth hash mark. Again, not counting the first one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it'd be right here. This would be 1 and 5/20ths. Now in decimal form, if I tell you to look for 1 and 0.35, we have to see how many 0.5s go into 0.35. Or you can just count up to 35 by 5s. So we can start with this first hash mark and go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. Right here would represent 0.35. So 1.35 would be right there. Okay? Let's clear this and let's go over some more things really quickly, like the one that you had. So you had this, and I don't remember exactly, but let's say this is 0.2 and this is 0.3, and it has hash marks in between it. So what we need to do first is we need to find the difference between the main hash marks, between 0.2 and 0.3. So if we were to take the difference of that, because we're trying to figure out how much these hash marks equal. So if we do 0.3 minus 0.2, we know that that's 0.1. Well, how many hash marks do we have? Remember, we don't count the first one, but we count the others. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 8 hash marks that this whole 0.1 is representing. So to know how much each hash mark is, we'll just divide that by 8. And so each hash mark represents 0.0125. Okay? So if I were to tell you to find 0.2375, I know it's going to be between 0.2 and 0.3 because this 2 tells me. So I'm looking right here. I'm looking at this. I need to find the hash mark that represents 0.0375. So I know this first one would represent 0.2125. This next one would represent 0.2, what is 125 plus 125 would represent 0.2250. And this next one, so we're adding this each time, 0.0125. So 0.2250 plus 0.0125 is equal to, this next hash mark would be 0.2375. So that's what we're looking for. So right here is what we're looking for. And that's how you would solve any of those.